So before I ask you about my mom, can you tell the story of how you met Nick?
You really want that recorded?
Yeah.
Okay. It was in Hartford. It was during the first year of World War II. The Russians were surrounding St. Petersburg. I mean, the Germans were around St. Petersburg. And the art community in Hartford was very upset about it because they were worried about the art pieces that were in the Hermitage. They didn't know that the Russians had moved them. that kind of information really didn't get through. It was... We heard most of the awful stuff. Okay. Anyway, I was living in a house with a Danish lady, her daughter, her son, occasionally, who sometimes lived with his father, who was a doctor in Hartford. Some woman who was learning to be a sculptor, and somebody else who was learning to be a singer, and 2 white Russians. So the art community selected this particular house to have a cocktail fundraiser for an organization they called the War Relief of Russia. Artists for the War Relief. Not just anybody, but the artists. This was organized by Chick Austin, who really was the organ behind, or the motor behind the Athenaeum in Hartford, which is a very nice small museum, and continues to this day to be sort of a little gem. And anyway, he had organized this, and they had selected this house because there were Russians living in it. Right? I was teaching school, so of course, when a cocktail party is scheduled for 3:30 or 4 o'clock, school teachers sometimes don't get home till 5. Well, I got home a little late, and I went to the bar and got my obligation of my cocktail, and I was wandering around looking for where should I sit? There were no chairs. Every chair was occupied because this was a popular charity at that time. So it's sitting on the floor was this gentleman leaning against was this gentleman. I looked, and he said to me, "Why don't you sit down here?" Pointing to the empty space on the floor beside him. So I said, "Well, all right." So I sat down with the cocktail in my hand. He looked at me, and he looked at the cocktail, and he said, "Do you dance?" I said, "Well, I've had a semester with Hanya Holm and a semester with Martha Graham." He said, "Oh my God, you've got to come down to the studio." So I looked him over, and thinning blonde hair and a hooked nose and buck teeth that were not so good, and long drink of water. And I said, "Well, I'll see." So after the cocktail party was over, I began asking questions about this man who said, "Come down to the studio." All right. And they said, "Oh, go. He's the best thing in dance in Hartford. Go." All right. So I went. And what I didn't know is that because I went, I became a member of his company. We were all put to work making dances. All right. That's that story. And you wanted it, you got it.
Yeah, it's a good story. So, what year was that?
1941.
Wow.
In
Before the war?
No.
Before?
1940. Wait a minute. 1941, I graduated from Columbia. And that fall, I went to work. It was 1941. The war started in 39.
Yeah. But not for us.
No, we hadn't been in the war yet.
Right.
It was 1941.
So then Nick had to go off to war.
Well, not then. He was drafted in the fall of 42. He was in the last draft.
Okay.
Because he was 30 odd. And they started with the youngsters and they worked up to the oldsters.
Yeah. Okay.
I mean, he was born in 1910, and this was 1942. So he was 30 odd.
So when he was off at war, the company was...
The company, well, no, he left us in the tender mercies of Anna Sokolow and Truda Cashman. Well, her mercies were a little more tender, but Truda Cashman had worked with Vigman, and she was the local modern dancer in Hartford. Anna Sokolow, Nick had known at Bennington. They had been together at Bennington as students, and she also was born in Hartford, and so she had a connection there. So he chose her to come. We had classes with her twice a week, and she was a son of a gun. Straighten your leg. Straight. No, straighter, straighter, straighter. Whoo. Oh. All right. She tells the story, Sokolow tells the story, that she was in the Graham Company, but she never did very much but stand still. But she stood the straightest and the stillest that she possibly could. And I think that's Anna all the way through. You do absolutely. All right.
So she was tough.
Yes, she was tough. At that time, I think she mellowed just a little bit as she got older. The last time I saw her was in the Merce Cunningham little theater that they have down at Westbeth. And at that time, she was blind. And it was kind of sad. But she still had that same feisty little personality.
So fast forward with Nick's company.
Mm-hmm.
You're in New York and you're at the Henry Street.
Well, when Nick came back from war, he was released from the army. He headed straight for New York. And meanwhile, during the war, I had left Hartford and went to New York to do some war work with my father. Okay, so I was in New York, still working in his office. And he came to New York and studied with all of the name dancers. At that time, the GI Bill provided classes in dance for the soldiers who wanted to do it. They paid all the bills. That was wonderful.
It's great.
That was a great service to a lot of young men. Yeah. And so he did Hanya Holm mostly, and he settled on her studio, and she was offered to teach in the public schools at night, amateur classes for adults, right? And she was too busy, so she said, "Nick, you do it." So Nick did it, and he called me up and he said, "Oh my God, you've got to come help me." He said, "I got 40 people here, and they don't know a straight leg from a bent leg, and I need help." So I went and helped him, and that started it. So, so anytime he wanted help, he hollered. He got the commission for Henry Street. He wanted people around him who knew what he was talking about. He phoned me up, "Can you come?" So I would leave work. We had classes only in the afternoon and evening that first year. So I would work in my office for mornings, and I would go to Henry Street in the afternoon, and we had a full, this was before your mother was there. This was 48, 49, no, 47, 48. was in the late 40s. And, you know, that's the way that would work.
So when do you remember first seeing Beverly?
I don't remember the first time I saw her, but I remember a class she was in. That class was all lined up. This was early in the season, all lined up at the footlights on the stage. And Nick was teaching from the auditorium, and I was there with him, right? And the problem was devise a motion, emotional phrase that you can repeat over and over. Well, they did all, you know, she started at one end of the line and went up to the other end. And Beverly was about in the middle. And these people were wiggling and all. We got to Beverly. Beverly goes. That kind of sharp motion. Repeating it over and over and exactly. This was there, this was there, this was there, every time. Right? This is very impressive. Okay? That's the first time I remember seeing your mother move. And so, I mean, that was early on, and it still stays here and stays in my body. I can feel her turning. Oh.
Yeah, she stood out.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Was Nick there?
Oh, he was teaching.
Oh, he was teaching.
Yes, and I was watching the class.
So Nick apparently noticed also.
Oh, I'm sure he did. He couldn't help it.
Was that around 1951 or something? Or
it would have to be early on.
Yeah.
Then the next time I had really a lot to do with Bev was when I was given Beverly and Dorothy Vislocky and Murray to create a trio. And I made a contraption of elastics and a frame of wood. And they moved around with this stuff. And years later, Nick and I were working on the slide board. He had a big contraption they had all the slides on. And he picked this slide. This is for Act 1, this is for Act 6, this is for Act 2, down the line. We were working on them and selecting for a dance he was working on. I don't know what dance it was. And he said, you know, that 1953 Tensile Involvement was your dance. I said, yes, I know. And what had happened is over the years, his Tensile Involvement, which was that big elastic thing that you're familiar with, I'm sure, had become and had always been stated 1953 on the bottom. Somebody called his attention to the fact that was not the 1955. So he changed it. But that was interesting.
So the original Tinsel Involvement.
Well, I was a trio involving your mother and Dorothy and Murray. Yeah.
And how different was it from the?
Oh, it was very different. It was a set structure of elastic, which they moved around, and it changed the design of the elastic because of the movement of where they would place it. If it let's say it had 5 or 6 and put them over here, and this is long and this is short, and over here this is long and this is short.
Yeah.
It was very different, and you moving back and forward across the stage as I recall it. I can't remember exactly what happened, but there's a picture of it, I think, on the website, on the Barnstow Journal.
Oh.
I'm not sure, but I think so.
Of the trio.
Of the trio.
Oh. I have to look for that.
It's somewhere on the internet, and I don't know where it is.
Okay.
But I would say Barnstow Journal.
And then when Nick did his, I think you said originally he wasn't using the name Tensile Involvement.
He used Webb.
Webb.
Okay, and there was it was a quartet to begin with.
Huh.
And streamers from the site. You're familiar with it?
I've seen it.
Yeah.
In a while.
It has streamers hanging off stage and anchored at the floor, and they can run on and off, and that makes different designs.
And at some point he decided to go back to the name Tensile Involvement.
I think so. Yes.
Which you came up with.
Yes.
Yeah.
He. That's the reason why it was misdated for so long.
Interesting. So what do you remember about Beverly in those early days?
I remember Black Traveler. I think that was the first. That was one of the first seasons. What was the date of Black Traveler? You remember?
I think 61.
That late?
I think so. I don't think it was 50s. At least as she stated on the programs, because I wasn't around.
You weren't? Oh, yes, you were.
Maybe up here I was.
Or down there in the seed, right? Okay. That was really such a strong impression that I had. Because I was doing the stage managing at that time, because I was off stage right. And the feet going, and the hat going, and the choo. One of the problems, of course, with early days was always accompaniment.
What do you mean?
Well, what we have this dance. How am I going to accompany it? And that was some kind of an oddball accompaniment that David Berlin came up with, some disc somewhere. But it's appropriate.
Yeah.
And no, I can still see most of that dance from the side, not from the front.
That was. I personally have never seen another dance like that.
No.
I don't know if that was part of some sort of
It was
going on.
Dances with things, the hat and the stool. This is what we were asked to do: is to create a dance with a prop.
Interesting. So, what else do you remember about Beverly from those times?
In 1960s, I remember her running around with a flower, an artificial flower. And it's some of the things that Nick asked her to do, she really didn't care about doing.
That's interesting.
I mean,
Yeah.
it really, she had no. You could tell when she was there and when she wasn't there.
Yeah. So you could tell she really needed.
She did as she was told, but something lacked.
Okay.
If she didn't like it.
So you think she was meant to go on and do her own?
Oh, absolutely. I think all of them were. They were all that way. And one way or another, Murray would stamp his foot and say, no, and Phyllis would say, now, Nick. But your mother would just do it and not quite be the vibrant performer that she, I guess.
Yeah. How would you describe the difference between Beverly and Gladys and Phyllis and?
Oh God. Gladys was always right there, time-wise, space-wise, and your mother was too. I think they were more alike than the other dancers in the company. Murray was always a little bit not itchy to get out of what he was told to do. And Phyllis in the same way also, a little bit.
When I saw Gladys recently, she said that she remembered her first impression of Beverly was how precise she was.
Absolutely.
Rhythmically.
Absolutely.
Whereas everybody else was either a little before or a little after.
Well, Gladys was precise rhythmically also.
Gladys said that she was very impressed that Beverly helped her to understand
be right there.
How to be right on.
There. Because this is what I'm talking about with my early remembrance of her in classes, the precision.
Yeah. Yeah.
Not only time-wise, but space-wise. She could put her body in the same place every time without any problem. And not many people can do that.
Yeah.
Because their bodies don't remember it. And it isn't that they don't want to. But for some reason or another, they don't feel this position. So this position.
So what about when you were touring all over the world?
I didn't tour over the world with Beverly. Because I don't remember Beverly anywhere.
Spoleto,
on tour.
Spoleto.
No, I was not there.
You weren't there?
I was in camp.
Oh.
I was at that damn camp.
Yeah. So when you were away at camp, Nick had to have somebody else go with him.
That's right. Okay. That's right. He had other stage managers.
But you were always welcome back at the end of the summer. That's nice.
Because I would do the schlep work. You know.
Yeah.
And a lot of other younger, more ambitious, or perhaps less devoted. I understood Nick's aesthetic completely.
Yeah.
And most of the other stage managers he had did not. Now Jim does. He's a little bit more dogmatic about it. But he understands it thoroughly. And there are other people. There's a man who is now working with Paul Taylor, who was also a stage manager who understood Nick's visual aesthetics. I don't know whether he understood the emotional aesthetics, but visual aesthetics completely.
Yeah.
But a lot of them didn't. They just did as they were told.
Yeah.
But, you know, in my position, if Nick got stuck, I would try to have ideas. I would have ideas. We batted ideas back and forth. Like we selected the slides and so forth. No, Nick, that's not right.
And what was it like going from Henry Street and working with kids and doing these sort of educational programs to becoming bigger and bigger stars?
I don't know how to answer that question. I think that when Nick left Henry Street, the concentration became totally on dance production, theater works, production of theater works, and of training dancers to be in those works. There was no other distraction. And I think that may have been good. it couldn't have been bad. Whether it led to a solidification of aesthetic, hardened it a little bit, I don't know. There was not as much exploration. It was using all the elements that he had discovered, yes, but there was not as much exploration.
Is some of that because
I don't know.
Once you're known for a certain type of work, then that's what people want to see.
No, I don't think that had anything to do with it.
Okay.
No. I think it was just a maturity, maybe.
Yeah.
I mean, you learn to speak a certain language when you're a kid, and this is the language that you speak. And as you get older, it's sometimes more difficult to learn a new language. Mm-hmm. I don't know. I think that's... He found his way, and so he went with it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Do you have opinions about what are Nick's best works?
Oh, God. You know, so many, they were so different. Mechanical organ, tensile involvement, night and day. You know, what is this? Best works? No.
Yeah.
There was one or two little flops, but they're not known, you know. He discarded them as well as they did.
Yeah.
He wasn't going to go along with something that was really turned out lousy.
And then, how would you say that Beverly differed from Nick as a choreographer?
She was precise. If she put her foot down on a beat, the foot always came down on that beat, and nothing else would do. Nick, on the other hand, would accept variations in his performers. This and different nuance. Beverly, no. It was always the same nuance every time she performed. And I don't know how she did it, frankly, because if you've got a bellyache, it has to affect you somehow, but she didn't let it. It was always the same wink on Besame Mucho, always the same wink, always the same smile, always the same.
What do you remember about working with her in the 90s when she was doing all those solo concerts in New York? She demanded you whenever she could get you.
Yes, I know that.
She wanted you.
I know that. And, no, I would leave here in October and go there for her. Because she was very special to me. She was wonderful to work with because, I don't know, somehow or other our minds seemed to, if I saw blue, she saw blue, you know? And and if she didn't like it, she could say so, and I could fix it, because I could see it too, you know?
Well, she
was never willing to compromise or to give up unless she could absolutely see that this is impossible. I can't have lightning strike here because it's over there.
She didn't get big audiences for those shows, but she certainly got some very good critical...
One doesn't... Art doesn't necessarily get good audiences. We know that. I don't know whether the Mona Lisa was liked in Leonardo's day or not. Was it? Did people think it was a wonderful portrait?
You're right, it doesn't matter.
No, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
It does not matter.
Yeah. She also got some wonderful critical praise.
Oh, of course she did, because she was a unique, dedicated, and pure artist. She was not thinking about her bellyache, or my dentist tomorrow, or do I have enough money in the bank when she was performing? No, she was there. And this is a lesson that young people have got to learn. If they're going to be an artist, they've got to be there, not anywhere else in the world.
Maybe you can mention that part tomorrow when we show it to these kids.
Okay.
What you just said.
Right. About performing.
Yeah.
You can't have anything else on your mind but this gesture. And it's obvious in everything that she does. This is it. Nick. Right? And I still can feel her doing these things because they were so clear and so pure.
Yeah. I wish that the video cameras were better able to capture it, because it comes through on video, but not like.
It's flat.
Yeah, it's flat.
It's flat, and I mean all pictures are flat.
Yeah. I know some dancers have done better with their videos. I think if they choreograph for the camera, like Yvonne Rainer, maybe.
Well, because I haven't seen any of. I worked with Yvonne Rainer in the '60s. That's the last I ever saw of her.
Well, I think she became more interested in the camera at some point.
Oh, okay.
And she created video dance.
I think that is a different kettle of fish from stage dancing, I think.
Right.
And one of the things that Murray, the year after Nick died, got the company together, and he rented a theater down at West Beth or someplace down Lower Manhattan, and hired a couple of extra people to light it and so forth and so on. I was here. I was not there. And it is overlit. All of them are overlit. The lighting is not right. And the shadows are not deep enough. And a shadow gives depth to the stage. You can't have it lit because you want to see it. No. And he blamed it on the fact that the cameras needed more light. I said, Murray, I'm sorry, but I don't like this. And the dancing is pretty adequate, but the theatrical aspects are ordinary rather than extraordinary. So I'm sorry that the film series does not have lighting aspects that it should have. And maybe it's not possible, I don't know. I've never questioned anybody else about it. But I
remember when I took a dance class with Annalisa. The one dance class I've taken in my life. She showed us a film of Martha Graham's company.
Yeah.
I forget the name of the piece, but it was one of her famous ones. And the camera work was wonderful.
Yes.
Cameras were right on stage with the dancers, and there were multiple cameras.
Yes.
And the lighting was very good. It was shot in black and white. Beautiful to watch.
Mm-hmm.
So that told me that it can be done, but not as a documentation of a stage performance, because that's a different thing entirely.
Yeah, I think this is what Murray was doing.
Yeah.
A lot of the early Graham pieces were photographed at Henry Street Playhouse.
Really?
In the 30s and early 40s. Huh. And when we got there, the flats that had been used to mask the stage and to make the stage were still all right there. They were gray because apparently that was shot in black and white. And
wow.
And this was 10 years after the fact.
Yeah. Huh. I didn't know that. I didn't know that there was a Martha Graham connection at Henry Street.
Oh yeah.
That's interesting. Henry Street is quite hallowed ground, I think, in the dance world.
It has a large history.
Yeah.
And it's not being used as well as it should be at this point.
Yeah, it's too bad.
And they destroyed the old Plaster Cyc. Why take down a Plaster Cyclorama? You know, that was wrong.
Why did they do it?
Oh, it gave them 2 more feet of stage space.
Yeah. Short-term thinking.
Yes. No. They picked the wrong guy to give them guidance. No, we went a few Plaster Cycs in New York. And it was well built. And they probably had to take a good sledgehammer to it.
Yeah.
Because one of the dancers, Coral Martindale, right? She was a kid off the street, right? And she had been playing on the streets since she was this big, you know, and she was full of energy. And one day, she takes a run and goes up on the cyc, and goes right over, parallel to the ground, at the top of it, and runs down. Nick was flabbergasted. He said, "Oh my God, all the rest of you learned to do that." And actually, in one of his pieces, this is what they did. This was the I don't remember which name of the piece is not, but in one of the ballets that he had, this was the finale. One after the other, these dancers going. And you know, it was something I wouldn't dare try.
It sounds dangerous.
I was too old at that time. I was too old to do that.
Yeah. I have yet to meet Coral in person, but I've talked to her on the phone.
Oh my God.
Seems like
she did Dorothy when Dorothy died. Mm-hmm. There was a memorial program at Hunter, and she did a dance. Now, how old is Carl? You know, she's in her 80s. Mm-hmm. That was simply gorgeous. And, you know, that to be able to, what I do is very frivolous, you know, but this was not frivolous. This was a memorial dance for Dorothy. It was beautiful. So when you talk to her,
yes,
you might know that she still is a dancer.
Okay.
Okay?
I will probably see her next month, I think, when I'm in New York again.
Okay. Next month, if you're in New York again, you come see me.
Okay. I'd love to.
Because next month, September?
Yeah.
Late September.
Late September.
I'm apt to be there by that time.
I'm there from the 17th to the 25th or something like that.
Well, maybe I won't be there on the 17th, but on the 20th I'm apt to be.
Okay. I'll see you then.
Okay. No. I don't. Of course, Dorothy and Carl were very close. Dorothy was always very. Dorothy helped support. Carl's kids and encouraged them and gave them their first synthesizer or whatever it is, some musical instrument that the kid wanted. And he has a band, and they play around.
Oh, that's great.
And so, I mean, that's the kind of, they had a different kind of a personal relationship rather as not just an artistic relationship. So, I don't know what Carl would remember about Beverly. I don't know.
Well, she
Oh, she must have.
Coral was very upset when Beverly died.
Of course,
And
of
she
course,
called me and
of course,
we talked for a while.
of course.
So.
No, but people die when they need to.
What do you mean by that?
Well, I think that Beverly was increasingly unhappy in her body.
Yeah.
And it probably got to the point where she wanted out.
Yeah.
And it had deteriorated on her. She was not able to do what she wanted to do.
Dorothy was more unexpected, I think, right?
More what?
Unexpected or sudden.
Yes, absolutely. She was here teaching in August, and she died in September.
Oh, wow.
Or September or October. It was in the fall. But
And she was really the first of the old Nikolai gang to go.
was she? Yes, yes.
So that's
Yes, she was. And she was one of the older members. Maybe your mother was a little older, I don't know.
I think my mom was a little older. Mom was 88 last year when she died.
Yeah. But no, Dorothy was more mature than most of them because she was already teaching at Hunter when she became a member of the company.
Oh, okay. I didn't know that.
Yep.
And what about Phyllis and Gladys? Were they...
Well, Gladys is a couple of years older than Phyllis. Phyllis is approaching 80, I think, at this point. They're early 80s.
Yeah.
But, you know, I was sort of aghast, because I'm 10 years older than they are anyway, maybe more. And at these at the Horse's Mouth for Murray, at the Henry Street Playhouse, they had to be helped down the stair. They spoke their speech. You sit in a chair and make a speech, right? And then you get up and you go to a place and you start improvising. And you improvise from different places around there. They couldn't improvise. They had to get up and be escorted down the stairs into the audience. And I don't know whether they don't trust themselves. I mean, you have to trust what you're going to do.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you don't improvise.
Yeah.
Or whether they were afraid that they might not be able to do well, or whether they were physically incapable. I'm not sure. I'm sure Phyllis wasn't physically incapable.
What about the Horse's Mouth for Nick? I know Beverly was there for that.
Beverly, of course, was Mrs. Featherbeak. This is one of the kids' shows.
The chicken costume.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
I have a picture of that.
That's Mrs. Featherbeak.
Mrs. Featherbeak.
Yes. And it was a kids' show. And she talked about that mostly. I don't remember improvisation there. I mean, that was quite a while ago. But
That was
this
for
this
Nick's-
just happened. Murray's horse's mouth just took place. You see, this
Yes,
winter,
Yes.
and there was one for Phyllis, and then there was one for Murray this winter. All right, and I don't remember what happened at Phyllis's horse's mouth with Gladys, whether she performed or not. I can't remember, but I was so taken aback at Henry Street
Yeah.
because they said no.
Yeah. Surprising.
It surprised me, yes,
Yeah.
because to me, it's because they don't trust themselves.
Yeah.
They're afraid that the motion is not going to live up to their standards.
Yeah. Well, Mom always told me for years, at least 20 years, she said, "Will you tell me when it's time for me to stop?"
Okay.
You know what I mean?
Of course.
She
of
was
course.
never, she didn't have confidence that she could recognize that it was no longer what it should be. But really, it never happened.
It never happened. No, it never happened, and it's not physical. I don't believe,
Right.
because I have stuff wrong with me, but I trust that my body will do what it can do, not what I in my mind want it to do, which is a very different thing.
Yeah.
And that's what improvisation is.
Yeah. I think Mom never really respected boundaries very much.
Well, why should she?
Yeah. Like I told you about her, the man that she married.
Right. Okay.
in
I mean,
49
that's
or 50 or whatever. That's just one example.
yes.
But the same was true in a lot of aspects, and I think one of them is the idea that when after a certain age, if you can't leap as high,
You don't.
you
You do
shouldn't
something else.
dance anymore.
That's not it.
She never,
No.
that never once occurred to her.
No. Because dance isn't leaping.
Yeah, that's right.
You know, and I'm sure she knew this, and I know this.
Yes. So I think as a teacher, that was one of the lessons she tried to convey to the kids at University of Illinois. Was this is not about your physical
Prowess.
prowess.
Right. No, it's not. It's
I remember her talking about Kazuo Ono to me, and I never saw him. Do you know who I'm talking about?
no, I don't.
Japanese dancer who was still performing into his 80s
Mm-hmm.
and doing dances about his mother and things like that.
Well,
But very small, but intensely.
all right. Ruth St. Denis.
Mm,
She was in her 70s the first year we were at the Playhouse. And she gave a performance at the Playhouse, mounted performance. I was the stage director, stage manager for the Playhouse. She was performing at 70s, in her 70s.
How was it?
Well, the kind of dancing she did is not necessarily my bag, because it was Oriental stuff, but it was beautifully done, precisely done the way she wanted it done. I'm sure. What is?
Do you want some water?
No. Ooh. Okay. No, she she had a man who helped her, her stage manager, I presume. And she finished her performance. Beautiful, okay. And they left. I said good night, and she said good night, and they left. And I finished cleaning up the stage, putting things away. Maybe 15, 20 minutes later, I go out, and they're standing on the street corner, at the corner of Grand and Pitt, right, waiting for a cab. Well, now in those days, no cab ever came down to the Lower East Side. Nobody could afford a cab down there. So I said, "Oh, Miss Ruth, you're still here." She said, "We're waiting for a taxi cab." I said, "You're not going to find one. I'm driving home. I will take you home." All right? Because I had to drive back to New Jersey. I wasn't going to travel by subway at 1 o'clock in the morning. So I took them home. And where she lived, in a tenement, it was a third floor walk up.
Wow.
And that, she shouldn't have had to be living there, that woman.
She's one of the founders of modern dance, right? Would you
Right.
say that?
I mean, one could put it that way, yes. Mm-hmm. She and Ted Shawn, who founded Jacob's Pillar, that I think you know about.
Yeah. How old was Martha Graham when you met her?
Well, it was in 1940. 1941. The fall of 1940. And I don't know how old she was. She could have been in her 40s, 50s at that time.
You took a class with her.
I had a class for a whole semester with her. She was a son of a gun.
Yeah.
I was uncomfortable in most of her class.
Why is that?
Well, she'd come in like this with her, always a satellite with her. She never traveled alone. She always had one of her women dancers with her. And she'd look at the class like this. "Good afternoon, boys and girls." By that time, I was ready to puke. Then she'd say, "Pull yourself up with your little animal ears." More puke. All right. Then most of what I remember about the class, mostly, two things. One, these excruciating contractions down to the floor, and these designed releases up from the floor and so forth. But Merce Cunningham was her demonstration boy. And when we went, he demonstrated across the floor. And he would leap from side to side to side to side. And he would fly. Wonderful. I enjoyed the class because of Merce, not because of Martha. Okay.
That's a great story. And then you took a class with Hanya.
Hanya, the next semester I had Hanya. Oh, I loved that class. Because you could move and jump up and roll over and go. That was my bag at that time.
Yeah.
I loved it.
Yeah.
So, of course, and Nick went for Hanya.
Right.
And I don't know, and that was not a plan.
Yeah.
It was just something about her aesthetic that attracted both of us.
But that's very interesting because what you're describing is two major branches
Of modern dance,
of
right.
modern dance.
Right.
At the outset, really.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Right.
That's cool.
That is cool. That is cool.
Well, is there anything else you'd like to say about Beverly before we turn it off?
That I love her.
Oh.
Okay?
She loves you too.
Yes, I know. We had something in common that was never spoken. And I think I think it was the aesthetic, absolutely. I understood her aesthetic completely.
Yes, you did.
So that was it.
Well, she was very, she knew that she was fortunate to work with you, and she wanted to work with you whenever she could.
Oh, and I wanted to work with her. You know, these things, in life, these things have got to be mutual,
Yeah.
you know? Or it doesn't, it doesn't happen. Or it doesn't happen if there's a conflict.
And she loved you as a person, too, I know that. And I'm really sorry she never made it up here.
Oh, she
would've
talked
loved
about
it.
it. She talked about it and how sorry she was about it. Here comes Carol.
Okay, I'm turning it off.
Yeah,
Thank
okay.
you, Ruth.
Right.